Welcome to the Changemakers Podcast, produced by City Current and powered by Higginbotham Insurance and Financial Services.
This show shares personal stories and insight from those who are leading by example, fueling positive change and making a difference so we can learn and do the same.
We cover life lessons, business advice, passion, and purpose.
Now here's your host, Jeremy Park.
Higginbotham Insurance and Financial Services is proud to power the Changemakers Podcast. We're a people-first company that protects what matters most, the families, businesses, and trailblazers that keep our community going. As one of the nation's top independent insurance firms, Higginbotham is a single-source solution for business insurance, employee benefits, HR services, and personal insurance that's customized for you. We're here to serve you, the people you care about, and your community. Call 866-377-1959 or visit higginbotham.com.
Welcome to the Changemakers Podcast, produced by City Current and powered by Higginbotham. I'm your host, Jeremy Park. On this episode, we're talking about entrepreneurialism, education, and teaching, how those worlds combine to create synergy with financial literacy and so much more. We're honored to have with us Changemaker Leigh Mansberg. She is the president and CEO of Junior Achievement of Memphis in the Mid-South. How are you doing, Leigh?
Oh, Jeremy, that was a great intro. I'm doing great today. Thank you. And super excited to be in conversation with you and to see how I can continue to have more impact on our community.
Well, you are doing tremendous work, you and your team. We'll talk all about JA and BizTown and all the energy that's created, and obviously, too, the entrepreneurialism. But let's start with your personal background, a little bit of your story. Give us some background on your childhood and where you grew up.
Sure. So I grew up in a town called Pine Bluff, Arkansas. It's about 2.5 hours southeast of here. Grew up with two parents who are both entrepreneurs. My mom is actually from Memphis, so I spent a lot of my childhood going back and forth to Memphis. I had a ton of friends here. I came to Memphis to go to dances and to just kind of have a bit of a social life. I went to camp with a lot of the children who grew up here in Memphis. And so just really nurtured in, that I-40 stretch and getting off and going to Hayes and Stuttgart and Pine Bluff. That was my backyard, and Memphis was my playground growing up.
You mentioned parents, entrepreneurs. Dive in a little deeper on that with your parents.
So it began, my parents planted seeds for this really early. My dad, in the early 70s, thought he's an attorney, thought, I'll be a concert promoter. And so at the Arkansas State Fair, he brought an unknown artist by the name of Waylon Jennings to Pine Bluff, Arkansas. And he thought we were going to make $1 bazillion. And at that time, no one knew outside of Austin, Texas, who Waylon Jennings was, and no one came to the concert. And my dad decided that he was not going to be a music promoter at that time. But he ended up becoming, he started building mini storages throughout Arkansas, and that kind of became his jam. And so we got to build that business with him. And my mother always had gift stores, but when President Clinton, she had started a paper company when people were doing early imprintables for invitations. And Arkansas in 1992 elected a president. And my mother's company became a lot of the some inaugural invitations, and it just launched her company. And it was great. And President Clinton's, it just was timed right that happened. And so you can go look up Oddballs. My mother's no longer with us, but her partner is. And it's an amazing company. And I just grew up in that world and about being an entrepreneur.
When you look back and you think about the challenges and, like trying to promote a concert and like you said, nobody's showing up and just the frustration on that side, but yet the excitement of creating something new and special. And then on the gift side, and going through that journey, like, when you talk about being involved in an election and a presidential campaign and, the president, like that's really cool storylines. What was maybe like one or two storylines that resonate with you around the frustration and challenges, but also the opportunities and energy of being an entrepreneur like this?
Yeah, that's a great question. And the fact of the matter is we have to model failure. And the greatest, most entrepreneurs, I believe, are some of your most courageous humans. 7 out of 10 entrepreneurial endeavors will fail. 2 will break even, and 1 is going to help you make money. And so we knew that. Like, my father refused to have 3 daughters crying while he lost a lot of money on Waylon Jennings. Instead, he told us, stand up, stand up, look around as if, he told us, he said, look around the stadium as if 20,000 people were here. We had a win tonight because we got here and did it. So I was constantly told that, and we live in a world where people try to protect their children from failure, and I think it's a huge mistake. You just don't learn anything. I mean, I love to win. I'm super competitive, but I actually love to compete more, because when I compete and I don't win, it's where I learn all the lessons.
That's actually really cool. Like, to think about it as, imagine 20,000. Hey, we have a private concert.
Oh, he would say to me, baby girl, you got to turn a negative into a positive. You got to turn a negative into a positive. And I still practice that in my work every day. I'll tell people, and a lot of times when I'm going around, I'll say, oh, I'm going to win. I'm just not sure what a win looks like yet.
Well, and I think, I had a tennis coach that would always say, to be able to kick butt, you have to have your butt kicked, right? Like, you have to understand how that feels, and you go through the lumps and the pain to be able to then inflict it later on and have the wins. But to your point, like, the way you learn is in many cases by failing and failing forward and saying, okay, I will, take these lessons and now I'm going to apply them over here. And that's how I can create some success, or at least lessen those curves, those learning curves. And so for you, education is a big piece for you. And so when you talk about getting into teaching and administration, where did that start to cycle in?
So I always knew I wanted to be a teacher. I would go to my dad's law office. I would play teacher with my siblings. I loved it. But, I think there's a divide when people think that teachers aren't entrepreneurs. They are. We just don't necessarily get to own a company. But how we reach children where they are is, it takes an entrepreneurial mindset, because if you go into teaching saying, I'm just going to spout out whatever anybody tells me to say, you are just becoming an agent of somebody else's voice. And so was always taught by both my parents, own your voice, love what you do, and be innovative in it. And so I've always hoped that my students have seen me as an innovator in the classroom. So I think all adults are by their natures teachers. They just have got to be willing to shape it and understand. Entrepreneurs are successful because they understand what their audiences need. And every time a teacher gets up to teach, every time a salesperson gets up to sell, if you don't understand your audience and the needs of your audience, you're just going to flatline. You're going to fail. And so education, I've always thought, and just for me in my own life, I've always believed education is the one thing no one can take from you. It goes inside. It's not a cool pair of shoes. It's not the new car. It's the thing that is completely untouchable by the rest of the world, no matter how hard your circumstances become. So we have to embrace education as the tool to set us all free from whatever.
Yeah. As you're saying that, I'm thinking, my dad's voice forever in my head around, because in college I was doing acting, music, tennis, like all these things. And he's like, you have to get your college degree because that's the one thing they'll never be able to take away from you is your education.
That is correct.
And it's so true.
It's so true.
I'm glad I listened. So walk us through your college experience and then your first job.
Sure. So my college experience was a little bumpy. I went to college in 1987. I don't know if most of the audience remembers what happens in the fall of 87. I headed out to the University of Colorado Boulder. And in the fall of 87, our country had a financial crisis that impacted my college career. So I was at the University of Colorado Boulder for a semester. And then, this is about that resiliency. It is about failing. I didn't like going away to college. I missed family. I came back. I went to the University of Arkansas for the semester, kind of got nurtured by the family, then moved to Memphis to go to the University of Memphis, where I have tons of family, going back to the start of our conversation. And so what every child needs, both my sisters were so happy going away to college. I needed to be around a community and family that I knew. so that I could really plant seeds. So I did my undergraduate degree in English and history, did my at the University of Memphis, went to the University of Memphis for my master's in education, and knew that Memphis was going to be my home. I went into the University of Memphis saying, who can you introduce me to? I want to be able to serve this city. I want to work in this city, and had a great, the University of Memphis School of Education. I got to teach for a year in Loretta Terrace's classroom at Overton High School and learn from one of the best of the best. And then went on to White Station High School from there. So my first job was an English teacher teaching 9th and 10th grade English at White Station High School. And now some of those students are volunteering for Junior Achievement. It's the greatest.
As you mentioned before, the fact that teachers are entrepreneurs, right? Like, you've got to make it meaningful, impactful. You've got to be constantly curious and creative and engaging. What was your growth trajectory as a teacher that then moved you into the administration and that side of leadership? Like, what kind of, when you look at stepping in as a teacher and then saying, I want to take on more, I want to be a leader, I want to be in a leadership role, walk us through kind of that shift over your career.
That's a great question. So it's the power of mentorship. I went into, and I think a lot of women of my age group went into this idea, I'm going to be this one thing, and that's what I'm going to do, and I'm going to take it and hold on to it for my whole career. It's one of the things I really love about our younger community is a greater flexibility in thinking, I could do a lot of different things with my life. That was never really inculcated into who I was early, that I could do a lot of different things. So Marlene Shaw, who was the head of St. Mary's at the time, walked into my classroom one day, and I was the chair of the English department. I'd been in a classroom for 20 years, and she goes, I think you could be a really good administrative leader. I'm like, what are you talking about? And she said, well, I'm going to send you to this conference. It's a small conference. She knew I didn't do well in big crowds. It was a small conference for women who wanted to go into educational leadership. I went up north to this conference. There were 15 of us there. And I sat through this conference and I'm like, whoa, I think I might be better at it than the rest of the people here. So I'd been underestimating myself until somebody else saw it. And when somebody else saw it, it kind of made the question. Then she put me in a place where I saw my competition, going back to I am so competitive. And I'm like, I can outperform this. Then I immediately started headed toward administration, and then realized that while I was a great classroom teacher, I actually was a really good business person. I actually was a really good designer of strategy and holistic systems that all had to do with education. And I ended up loving that. Not that I didn't love all of my teaching experiences, but I loved the idea of moving an organization and shaping how I became just really fixated on the how things work and not the delivery of it.
How do you think the empathy of being a teacher, moving in because you became the assistant head of school, and when you look at stepping into those sort of leadership roles, but understanding the dynamics and then carrying that into obviously your role now, like when you look at this kind of marriage between entrepreneurialism and leadership and then teaching and education, having the empathy and that understanding, I think, is a power on your end. It's a superpower for sure. How do you kind of look at it in terms of having the respect and empathy of, walking a mile in those shoes, being a teacher, but then stepping into those leadership roles?
I think empathy is it. And I'm glad you used that word because I think with any leader, if you lack empathy, if you can't understand the impact of your work on the other, what are you doing? And so it was a really, really great gift for me to have spent the bulk of my career, and still the career now, in service to educators, because I was there. I knew what it felt like when administration would just pop in and say, we're going to use an all new English curriculum. And it would implode your entire world. And it was so difficult. And so I was really, really careful about that. And so before I serve anybody, I do have a servant mindset. I believe that I am here to serve others, whether I'm in a for-profit or a not-for-profit world. And so every leader has a different mindset. That just happens to be mine. And it gives me a particularly onerous demand that I find the empathy. If I haven't had that lived experience, I have to find something that connects me to the other, because I want to make decisions that are helpful to people. And I don't want people to resent me at the end of the day. I want people to be glad that I was here to serve. And I want them to believe I did that with integrity and honesty. And so that's just what makes me tick and what makes me roll.
So what pulled you out of education into the world of entrepreneurialism?
So I knew that I lacked some skills. I'm an incredibly self-aware human. And one of the things I lacked skills in was the finances. Like, you can be really entrepreneurial. And so it was really easy in a school like St. Mary's, where we were gifted with parents and families that could pay tuitions, where we were gifted with an endowment fund and an annual fund and those things that could make it possible. But then I just became curious, what if those things weren't in place? What if you were leading a nonprofit? And this goes to the empathy part. What if you didn't have all of those things? So I wanted to develop those skills in me. So it was a very intentional career move. First, I wanted to develop those skills. I wanted to become a businesswoman. I knew half of me was very good in terms of the strategy part of a business, but you're useless without the financial resources to support that strategy. So I wanted to go to work in the for-profit world to understand how to build a business, to meet the members of the business community. Why were they investing in nonprofits? What is the Community Reinvestment Act? Why do some businesses want to invest in these and some businesses want to invest in others? And so I did that for 2 years. And one of the most influential things I did was studying and working as the chief operating officer at Epicenter, because what it taught me and what Leslie Lynn Smith and what Jessica Tavo taught me was that if you don't understand the economy in which entrepreneurs are living, if you don't understand the banking system and what it's doing to entrepreneurs and the access to capital. And so I did all of that, and I learned all of those things for a 2-year period of time. And then I knew I was ready to take it back to the children. Now I knew all of those things. And so then I wanted to get my own nonprofit that I was going to be accountable for. You know what it is. You got to pay people. I get paid last. And you wake up every payroll, the same thing that any business owner has, saying, I have to take care of my people and the people we serve. And so that was kind of that trajectory of how do I bring all of those entrepreneurial skills and funnel them into a tight funnel and make that happen.
What's interesting is, we talk about intentionality, like that's the key to success in so many different ways. And when you look at, and I've known you for, many, many years, and it's like, just even hearing this around the intention to close those gaps on, okay, what do I need some, help with over here to learn and experience and grow, to then take that into creating larger impact in an area around education, financial literacy, the things that I'm so passionate about based on my prior experience. But how am I better equipped to serve and create impact, and the intention around going and getting that experience to then come over here and magnify it? That's really cool. And I think so many people can learn from that around, okay, in many cases, I got to take a pivot to be able to make a greater difference. And so I love that piece of the storyline. What then led you to Junior Achievement of Memphis in the Mid-South?
So I really love the work of Epicenter, as I knew I was going to move to a next step. I just really love business development and creating opportunity for everybody. And I was tiptoeing around, seeing what was out there. And I was at the New Memphis Christmas party, and I just got to meet some members of their community. And when I found out Junior Achievement was going to be looking later that spring, that Junior Achievement was looking for a new executive director, I thought, I should join that conversation. It had everything I was looking for. It's really a school. It was building businesses, which was my experience at Bridge Capital and Epicenter. I knew how to work with schools. It seemed like it had all of the parts and pieces where I was like, oh, I could start knitting this together. And that's that entrepreneurial piece. It's the education piece. So it was 25 years of working, all coming together to put me in a place where I needed to be, where I felt like, as hard as it was, and it's hard every day still, but it was particularly hard in those first few years. But I felt like I had the tools. And so I would ask every entrepreneur or leader, like, do you have the tools to get the vision done? And I'm like, whoa, for the first time in my life, I think I've got the tools to get these things done. Like when I had to do the PPP loan on by myself, I knew how to call an accounting firm. I knew how to call banking partners. I was like, whoa, I used to be an English teacher and I just filled out an application for a PPP loan and got it.
I can do this.
And if I could do it, I think almost anybody could do it now. Like we can talk, we are, as humans, we are so pliable if we're willing to push ourselves and test ourselves.
We're going to switch over and talk all about junior achievement here in a second. One last question, though, kind of going back to your parents. When you're going through this journey, especially around stepping into the world of entrepreneurialism and then stepping in, obviously, into junior achievement, were there any conversations back with your parents around, hey, share some experiences? What did you go through? In other words, did you lean on them in any way for just knowledge, experiences, lessons learned? Or was it more like, I'm going to go through this on my own and kind of carry the torch forward?
No, my parents, my father in particular. So my father is both a businessman, he's an attorney, he's had multiple entrepreneurial businesses, has been a managing partner. So as I've navigated legal issues, staffing issues, but really like bravery when it comes to funding, as we had to build the budgets out, as we had to restructure our budget, we just had to do a lot of things. And, everybody needs a safe place to be able. And so if it's not a parent, I would ask any entrepreneur, who is your safe place? Because, I still had to keep a board confident that I knew what the heck I was doing. And as much as your board is your safe place, there are still places where you need to go to be able to have your safe outlet. So whether it's a mentor who's a parent or a person in the business community, which I have people in the business community where I'm like, I don't know. I mean, you've answered questions for me like this. Like I remember calling, asking like, Jeremy, I don't know how to do this event. And you showed me how. We live in such a generous community, the South as a whole, but Memphis in particular. People will help you if you have the courage to ask for help. They really will, and not feel like, oh, I just hurt my business by helping her. That is not how this community works at all.
Well, let's switch over. So when you talk about Junior Achievement of Memphis in the Mid-South, go ahead and give us the elevator pitch.
Love to do that. Junior Achievement of Memphis in the Mid-South is making sure that every child is world ready to live a life of choice. We are the only organization, kindergarten through 12th grade, providing financial literacy, workforce readiness, and entrepreneurship education, all integrated together. But what makes us even most fun, it's in partnership with the districts we serve, and it's all play-based learning. No tests or quizzes here. It is all about hands-on, minds open.
I love how that just rolls off the tongue. Like that's so good. That's nice. Nice job. So talk about growth, because you've got a new facility that's absolutely amazing, and you've got tremendous growth in terms of reach and students and, volunteers. So give us some stats that warm your heart.
Oh, stats that warm my heart. I'm so proud of the fact that in 4 years, we are now going to be serving 30,000 children this year. I'm very proud of the fact that we have grown our reach from 21 counties to 71 counties, which means that we are set and on the precipice of the ability to create a regional economic development approach to creating a shared language around entrepreneurship and financial literacy and finding a career and a life of choice for the children throughout the region. There are over 650,000 children that could be reached in our footprint. We are so proud that just from our board members that are on our board and their companies, and just this year alone to date, they have delivered over 30,000 volunteer hours to make our programming possible. So it is going to be an exceptional year, and we are very excited that with our partners at Cumulus Media, we have launched World Ready Radio. That is on its second season, just dropped last week. Episode 2 drops today.
That's awesome. But it shows the power of partnerships and teamwork. And I know between, Morgan and Cumulus, and then Mike Bruns, who's played an integral part, like you've got some amazing partnerships and friendships that are really helping to lift in big ways. And I think that teamwork is what, powers the good on so many different fronts. And so when you talk about world ready, what does that mean and why is that so important?
So when I started August 9th, 2019, people will tease me that I locked the staff in the room. I did not lock them in, but I did tell them we weren't getting up until we developed 4 words that would be our North Star. And out of that session came the expression, and it's not allowed to change. Every child world ready. That is what we commit ourselves to, that no matter where a child lives, urban or rural, no matter what that child's neighborhood looks like, we believe fundamentally that every child has the right to be ready and have equitable access to the tools to enter the world on his or her terms. That means it's really hard work because that's something different for every child we serve. And we have to be able to be great educators and flexible enough leaders to realize that when we're at one school, they're going to need another thing than what other schools are going to need. And that's not a judgment. That is a place of opportunity for us to make sure that every child is ready to be a part of this world and no one gets left behind.
Why is this so important for economic development, especially workforce development, effort, attitude, having, creating the right culture? Like, I think there's a lot of layers to this, but why is this so important for our future leaders, future workforce?
It is the thing for our workforce. Memphis is achieving and recruiting incredible businesses. Not only Memphis, down in Marshall County and Cummins' new plant there, it's everywhere. And there are so many opportunities, and they are going to require thousands of humans to fill these opportunities from the region. We cannot afford to leave a child behind because we cannot fail these companies that are believing in us. It is a partnership between all of us. And so listening to the needs of our business community, getting our children excited about those opportunities and planting seeds of hope for our children to be a part of that is so critical. And it is going to take all of us. Our schools are going to have to thrive to accomplish this. It's not an option.
You've been on all of our different shows, and so we'll let people kind of go and explore those because you can do a lot deeper dive on just the model and ways to get involved. We'll touch on some of that here, but give us a little bit when you talk about some of the innovative programs, the ways to get involved. I mentioned earlier JA BizTown. You've got a lot of amazing things and ways that people can get involved. Give us a couple as a little bit of a teaser on that side.
So a great teaser on that side is we are in love. We have just been accelerating our growth outside of this building in a program called JA in a Day, where we take over an entire school with anywhere sometimes between 40 and 60 volunteers. Our largest one yet came from Ernst & Young, where they brought over 60 volunteers to Germanshire Elementary, and it is, imagine the most joy-filled field day of learning how to join an economy, understanding the role of government, understanding the jobs, meeting entrepreneurs, and having incredible experiences. And then in May, we will have JA Inspire Career Exploration. Those are like 2.5-hour shifts. And if we are concerned about crime and what our teens are doing in this city, then please be a solution to it. Come out and show them a career. If everybody was gainfully employed and believed that there were opportunities in front of them, these statistics of crime would go down quickly. In the absence of hope, humans will fill that void with something else. So we as adults and as volunteers have the opportunity to fill that void. And we're going to have to take a little risk. We're going to have to get ourselves a little uncomfortable and be okay with that. We cannot ignore it.
Yeah, and I think, all of those we've experienced ourselves, and just to see the kids having a blast and, bouncing all over with huge smiles and learning and seeing, because it goes back to you can't be what you can't see. They see new opportunities and hope. And I think that becomes the positive trajectory. And they also meet people who care, who can be role models and mentors and, chaperones for their future. And I think all of that is so important for getting youth in a positive direction, but also to creating the relationships that lead to powerful new opportunities for everyone, for our community. And so touch on maybe 1 or 2 ways for the community to get involved with Junior Achievement of Memphis in the Mid-South.
Absolutely. And if you even want to understand why and what the separation is, we were in school the other day and the children ran up to our volunteers, threw their arms around them and said, "You showed up. They didn't believe that they were going to come. So that is what our youngest people believe, is they don't believe that our volunteers are going to show up. So we must show up. So to show up, it's really easy. All you have to do is go to jamemphis.org or Volunteer Memphis. Look up Junior Achievement on the jamemphis.org website. It is so easy. There's a button that says Volunteer Now. If you go to Volunteer Memphis, just in the search bar, enter Junior Achievement. And there is such a large variety of opportunities to engage, from 1 hour to 2 hours to 5 hours. We can meet any of our volunteers and community members where they are to accommodate their schedules.
And it goes back to, just like you're saying, be a part of the solution, be a part of the positive, power the good, exactly what we're all working to do to make a difference. How have you changed as a leader when you look at, being intentional, getting the experience, stepping into Junior Achievement in Memphis in the Mid-South? Now, when you look at where you are in this moment, how have you grown as a leader tied in with Junior Achievement?
I have become, I think, far more courageous, because it has taken, everybody knows what these last 4 years have been. And I've been proud of my ability just to keep getting up. But then I'm inspired every day. I get to meet people all over this city, and they get to and everybody that underestimates Memphis is making such a huge mistake. Every corner of our city has light and hope-filled people fighting for their communities. And if you sit kind of closeted away, you don't get to experience that. And it's what I love about this job. People are like, are you always this energetic? And I am, because there's just so much opportunity. And I love your expression, power of the good. I wish it were ours. Because if we'll get up every day and people will say, oh, you're the Energizer Bunny, because that power is within each of us. You have to find your own way. And so going back to your original question, these last 4 years have really taught me that there's something inside of me that if I tap it, it keeps this going. And I have really enjoyed getting to know that side of me, quite honestly.
Dive in a little deeper on that, because it's interesting. I've had a lot of conversations during the pandemic and even out of the pandemic, because people ask, are you always positive? Are you always, power the good? Like, how do you remain positive? And I tell them it's a choice. Like I put on a hat as a community champion is how I view myself. Like I play a very, specific role. And with that, I can choose one of two paths with any interaction. I can be positive, and even in a very challenging situation, I can say, okay, respectful, empathy, understanding where they're coming from, but I make a choice to take a positive, or I can go a negative, right? And so for me, it's not that like everything is rose-colored glasses. It's the intentionality with my attitude and my effort to remain positive, even in very difficult situations. And always look for the lesson learned. Like, how do you grow, right? How do you develop? And so it's not, and yes, for me, I'm definitely more extroverted versus introverted. So I enjoy being around others, and that's where the energy, also kind of comes in. But for me, when you look at kind of how I lead, there's intention around being positive for myself and for others, because I just view power the good as the North Star. For you, when you're dealing with this, talk about kind of that internal motivation, because when you're dealing in your world, it's always challenges. There's a lot of negative in the world and a lot of negative every single day that comes at you. So talk about how you are able to keep the energy up, get up out of bed, and have that North Star of, pushing the good energy and driving with purpose.
So I think that what mine is I choose joy. It's what gets me up every day to serve my family, to serve this organization. And I think we have the opportunity to complain about our world. We have the opportunity to do that. I choose not to. I choose to see that my words and my actions have impacts on others. So when I choose negativity, it spills out on everybody else. I could complain about, if, for example, our children in our community knows this, are struggling readers. Does that mean they don't get to come to JA BizTown? Of course not. It means JA BizTown has to find a way to meet them and get them one step further. And that, to me, that is the opportunity of promise. I see promise everywhere. And if I don't see promise everywhere, or I can't deliver on a promise, I need to stop. I need to get out of the way because I'm just becoming the problem then. And I refuse to be the problem. And so that's what gets me up every day. And I'm competitive, as I said earlier. I'm going to get the problems out of the way. And so that means that we have to be truth tellers. So I'm never going to sugarcoat the truth. I will always talk about the hardness, but I'm going to come at it with solutions. I'm just not going to sit around complaining about struggling readers. I'm going to give them solutions so that they can have opportunities for the future. Why am I here if I don't do that?
You've had a lot of opportunities to create joy. And even going back to, like you said, when you were teaching and now those students are volunteers and engaged with, Junior Achievement, right? So you get to see the evolution, the growth, the full circle moments. You've, got new structures and programs and innovation and volunteers and, more reach and expansion. So there's so much joy that you've been able to create. What are maybe one or two special moments for you? And it could be like the ribbon cutting or, having a certain person come volunteer. But for you personally, like what are one or two special moments, whether it's over the last couple of years or even, beyond that really stand out?
My favorite moment, and fortunately, I get to have it over and over again. If I'm not having a perfect, wonderful day, which is most days, but it's not my favorite day, I will go stand in the simulation space as the children are coming in, and the children will come in and turn the corner. And if they've never been here before, they go, oh! And they can't, a lot of children are like, and it was a part of our design, the promise we made to investors is that we would give the children the most beautiful, perfect, exciting space so that every child felt valued. And it worked. And so the children turn the corner and they see it, and they're children, the children are better to our building than the grownups are. Like I will say the grownups, no drinks inside the simulation. They still bring it. But the children are like, stop that. Don't hurt J.A. Biztown. And that makes my heart soar every time. And when we go do JA in a day at an elementary school, and the elementary school will like have children dressed like in their cheerleading uniforms, and they'll have balloon arches, and they'll make signs for us, and the volunteers will be so nervous. And then this little second grader will come and say, hello, Mr. Park, I am your tour guide today to the classroom. And your face like, okay, I'm doing some good work here, as they get led off by a little 4-foot-something person. And they're like, yes, I have a purpose. I can do more for my city. Those are my favorites. It's just the best.
That's awesome. And that also too, back to the point about purpose and being driven and realizing like the impact, being able to see the impact, create the joy that then leads you, when you talk about going through a tough situation, it's like, you know that over here, there's so much better, you got a smile coming over here. So it's like, it's worth it. Let's just power through because there's a smile coming over here. So
that's right.
I love it. So let's go ahead and wrap up with some lightning rounds. So it'll be short questions, short answer, just a fun chance to get to know you a little bit better. What do you like to do to relax, Leigh?
Every Friday night, I am really getting the habit. I love to cook family dinner and just have everybody show up.
So what's a go-to meal, or is there such a one?
Well, there is. I don't eat meat. My daughters love it. I don't know if you're familiar with John McCain ribs. And you can put them in the crock pot. It makes the house smell delicious. And everybody's like, John McCain rib night.
So when you have visitors come to Memphis, the Mid-South, what are some go-to places you like to take them to?
I love to go to the zoo, but mostly because I'm a grandmother now and my grandson is obsessed. I love to send them to our parks and to our nature spaces, to the Green Line, to walk. Oh, a really good one I love to tell them to do is to let me plan their eating journey. I'll tell them to go downtown in the summertime, do the farmer's market, go by Hive, then walk across the bridge, get your exercise in. And everybody calls me up. They're like, that was amazing. I love that experience.
So you like a whole journey. That's good. So Hive, that's bagels and all sorts of
bagels and gorgeous pastries and good coffee and all that good stuff.
So do you have like a favorite bagel?
My favorite bagel that they do is the plain bagel, but it's the egg sandwich, and it's got cheese and all kinds of good stuff on its deliciousness.
So outside of the Mid-South, what's a favorite vacation spot?
Any place with water and beaches that aren't overly crowded so that I can walk for hours. I can, as energetic as I am, if I can manage to get away on vacation, I can sit and not get up for a week straight. If I can look at the water and I am a former English teacher, but I love trash novels. I'll get a full stack of like Reese Witherspoon trash. Some of them are not trashy books. Some of them are. I'll be unapologetic about loving them. And I love to just sit on the beach, talk to my family for hours and read. Favorite thing to do.
So what is a date night? What's something you enjoy as a date night?
So the husband and I'm a great cook. I love to be in the kitchen, but I am not great at a lot of international cuisines. So we typically only go out to eat to places where we can kind of discover foods I can't cook. So we'll hit a lot of Vietnamese restaurants. We'll hit Summer Avenue, check out some of our Latino friends' restaurants. And we like to do a little more exploring. We like to plan. I love foodies. We'll cook together, things like that.
So when you're out and about, are you looking at, oh, that's a good idea? Or is it one of those where you're just in the moment and you turn that wheel off? Is the wheel always spinning?
Yeah, the wheel is kind of always spinning. I'm not very good at shutting the brain down. In fact, 3:08, for some reason, I wake up at 3:08 in the morning. All of my ideas are there. I now thank goodness that there's the note function on a telephone. I write them all down. It takes me like 10 minutes, then I go back to sleep.
So 3:08, that's interesting. So how long is it one of those where it's like an idea comes, write it down, and then you're back, and then what time do you wake up again after that? Or is it one of those where it's like, no, I'm staying up because I got all these ideas?
I've really had to discipline myself to go back to sleep. Like I'm trying to prioritize some rest. But usually I'm up by 5:30 most days. And those are kind of my favorite hours because that's when I'll spend 2 hours on the computer. We're, thoughtfully responding to emails, sometimes doing some of my writing for work. And I still do a lot of our grant writing. So that's kind of what those hours are for.
Now it makes perfect sense. Before we hit record, you were talking about a nap. Now I know why.
Yeah, like by 2 o'clock, I'm like,
are you able to squeeze in a nap at any point during the day?
Well, if you've been in the new building, we have no privacy anywhere. So no, but I think we're about to put in like a nursing room for our mothers around here. And so I think I'm going to buy one of those stressless chairs to go in there. So it will be a nursing room / Lee's micro napping room.
Well, there's all sorts of, research and study to show that a 15-minute nap is extremely effective. So, hey.
Oh, I think I'm about to be the queen of them.
What's a recent book you've read? And it can be trashy or non-trashy.
A recent book I read, I'm in a remarkable book club. It's not trashy. I'm in a remarkable book club with some women here in town. I used to be an Americanist, which means I studied American literature. And they really want to get into some American classics. So they've let me teach them. And so I just finished teaching them Light in August. And we are about to move on to The Taming of the Shrew by William Shakespeare, which is not American literature, but I've never taught Taming of the Shrew. So I wanted to give it a try. So I'm kind of excited to be in that. But Lessons in Chemistry, I loved that book. And I read it with my daughters, and that was super fun.
That's cool. What's a family tradition? Is there one from you growing up that you've carried with you today? Or what's a family tradition in general? I'll give you a broad range on this one.
Oh, a family tradition in general. It would be Meemaw cookies. So my grandmother used to make these cookies at the holidays every year. That required her grating pecans for hours and hours. And I was the only grandchild she taught how to make them. So the daughters and I make Meemaw cookies. We send them to the cousins every year. And you know what I named my daughter Ramel after my grandmother. Nobody could believe I named a 5-pound baby Ramel. It felt like that should be a name going to a 10-pound baby. And she was my person of persons. And so I can just hear her going, "Oh, you burned the edges. Oh, you didn't grind the pecans enough." And she would complain in ad nauseum about that. Or, "Oh, where's your lipstick? You need to put more lipstick on. But she was my treasure. And so every holidays we bake meemaw cookies and gorge on them. And she's just there with us. And it's just, nobody needs presents. We just want to eat meemaw cookies.
That's awesome and special. I like that. That's good. So what's a quote or a saying that inspires you? It doesn't have to be verbatim, but what's a quote or saying that inspires you?
So Twain wrote a quote, and he's a very misunderstood writer and probably not one of my favorites, but he said this quote, always do right. It'll gratify some and astonish the rest.
Carry that into your legacy, because obviously, you've got a long legacy that you've already created, and each and every day you're creating your legacy even more and building on that. And you have a long, long way to go. But many years from now, what do you hope that people say about you and your impact for them personally as a teacher and educator, but also through JA and Junior Achievement of Memphis in the Mid-South, when it comes to promoting entrepreneurialism here in the Mid-South and our future workforce and leaders?
Big question. Number one, I hope I was a critical part of children, and this is a long play, entering and wanting to keep the reservation and stay here in this region. I believe in this region. I want to be a part and a solution for this region, being a thriving, competitive place. But the greatest legacy I could hope for, and legacy is such a word we have to be so careful with, I hope some children wake up and say, I'm living the life I wanted to live. Whatever that is, judgment-free. And somehow the organizations of which hopefully they think that nice lady there, whatever organization she was working for, she believed in me and her organizations believed in me and thought that I deserved to have a life of joy and purpose to be and live the life I want.
Well, that goes back to the empowerment and the hope and opportunities and the joy. So tie that into where we can go to carry this conversation forward with you and Junior Achievement in Memphis in the Mid-South. So you mentioned it before, mention again the website, but where do we go to learn more and get involved?
Please get involved. jamemphis.org is your landing page, or just Google Junior Achievement, or please come by the Wang Experiential Learning Center and see what we're doing with our middle school students. But we want to be in partnership with all of you out there, and thank you so much.
Well, Leigh Mansberg, President and CEO of Junior Achievement in Memphis in the Mid-South, you are a change maker. Thank you for all you and your amazing team do to power the good. Thank you for coming on the Changemakers podcast.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Higginbotham Insurance and Financial Services is proud to power the Changemakers podcast. We're a people-first company that protects what matters most, the families, businesses, and trailblazers that keep our community going. As one of the nation's top independent insurance firms, Higginbotham is a single-source solution for business insurance, employee benefits, HR services, and personal insurance that's customized for you. We're here to serve you, the people you care about, and your community. Call 866-377-1959 or visit higginbotham.com.
Thank you for listening to the Changemakers podcast, produced by City Current and powered by Higginbotham Insurance and Financial Services.
To learn more, to listen to past episodes, and to share your stories of other changemakers who are making a difference, visit citycurrent.com or call 901-321-1020.
Follow the conversation online using the handle @CityCurrent or the hashtag #PowerTheGood.